Hey y'all, welcome to Tears and Joy in Your 20s. I'm your host, Julia Light, and I am so glad you're here. Navigating your 20s comes with a lot of highs and lows, a lot of freedom, and a lot of uncertainty. That's why I created a space for conversation about all of it. On this podcast, you'll hear interviews of creatives, entrepreneurs, people doing big things in their 20s, telling their story, tears and joy and all. I hope this helps you know you're not alone. There's so much to look forward to, and you can savor this season right in the messy middle. Hey y'all, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have an interview for you with Lauren Franco, who's the founder and executive director of Gather, a women's nonprofit here in New York that builds community and leadership empowerment. Lauren's an incredible leader. She's incredibly creative, and she just has a ton of perspective about her experience in her 20s so far. She's done a bunch of cool things. She's also looking forward to doing a bunch of other things. And she has a really honest and hopeful lens, which is exactly what we're going for here. So I'm excited to share this combo. I'm going to read her bio and then we'll jump in. Lauren is a multi-hyphenate creative storyteller and founder. She is the executive director and founder of Gather, a nonprofit with the mission of bringing women into community and conversation through discussion-based events. The organization is also focused on helping women grow in their leadership and be successful in their lives and career. Lauren manages a full team of 20-plus women volunteers in their 20s, along with 5 location teams across the world. She is an actress, producer, and writer on various projects and has hosted the Girls Who Gather podcast for the past 3 full seasons. Her day job is in fashion, working to market and produce New York Fashion Week, a fun and creative endeavor that she loves dearly. She's an NYU alum, born and raised in Southern California, and is an active follower of Jesus and member of her church here in New York. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm great. Yeah, it's Friday when we're recording, so
we're doing a fun thing.
All is right in the world. Yeah. Oh, yay. Well, okay, Lauren, you have had the coolest 20s from an outside perspective. I feel like your story is amazing. You've founded a nonprofit. You've had these really cool jobs. You've done so many cool things. I would love if you would just kind of walk us through your journey. Like, how did you found Girls Who Gather? How did you get into all the things that you're doing now? If you could just tell us the story of your 20s.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Southern California originally, so Orange County. Grew up acting and singing and was a super emotional child. So that's how I found acting, because I needed somewhere to put all that emotion.
Yes.
So I went to an arts high school, actually, which was kind of crazy. You take your regular classes in the day, and then you have your conservatory classes at night. And so it kind of just consumes your life. You're at school all the time. But it was really fun, and I learned a lot. And when I graduated, I knew that I wanted to live in New York from the time I was probably 10. Never been to New York. Never, didn't really know anything about it. But from the time I was really young, I just knew. I just had this little seed inside me that knew that I would be in New York one day. And so I don't know, I got into NYU when I graduated and was super stoked to go. Gave the commencement address at my high school and was like, I'm going to New York and I'm going to study this and this. And then come summer, I just had this really crazy moment where I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to go yet. It wasn't a no, it was just a not yet. And that was so such a hit to my pride, because I was just, I told everyone. I made the announcement. I had worn the purple robe and done the whole post about where I was going. And and then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not supposed to go yet. And I kind of chalked it up to I'll just act for a year. And I just signed with an agent. And so it worked out that way. And I actually did. I took a year and I was auditioning in LA and doing the whole Hollywood thing. And it was great. It was hard. All my friends were in school. They're having their freshman year experiences. And I was home driving to LA every day from Orange County, which, if you know, it's far.
Yeah, no, it's
Take
far.
Anywhere from 1 hour to 3 on a good day, and for a 15-minute audition.
Yeah.
So I think it was a beautiful year. It was really, really hard, and in that year, I had this crisis where my grandpa passed away, and I remember just being really. I knew he was a Christian, and I knew that. He kind of had, I kind of was confident in where he was going and the legacy that he left behind, but I had no idea what I was doing. And so I took it upon, I was like, all right, I need to figure this out. Faith had always been something kind of in the background, and Christianity is very sort of cultural where I'm from. It's just everyone's kind of a Christian by default, but I was like, just because it's the default doesn't mean it's true, and decided to read everything. I read the Quran, I read the Bhagavad Gita, I read the Book of Mormon, I read I read a bunch of stuff, and I was like, all of this is essentially the same, right? And I think for me personally, where I was at too, the story of the Bible really and Jesus was so like crazy and so different than anything else I had read, because God was like, you can't do it yourself. I'm going to come do it for you. And I'm going to come rescue you from this and love you. And like, you don't have to, because at the time I was just like, I was really depressed. I was struggling with really bad eating habits and disorder. And I think I was like, I can't do this myself. I needed a savior. I needed God. So I had this whole crazy like life change of coming to faith, which I did not expect. And then spent a second year at home again and was doing got asked to do some human rights work in Rwanda and Berlin and Mexico. And so I was just like traveling. So I had 2 years before I went to New York. And I think those were really foundational, really crazy. And had I gone to New York as a baby, like 17, 18-year-old, I would have just been swallowed alive and spit out. So I see just the grace in like the not yet. And when I finally got to New York, I was like, had a solid, like, this is what I believe. And this is kind of what I want in this city. And I just, I wasn't fully formed, but I had enough of like a grip on kind of who I was at that point that it was really great. So by the time I get to New York, I'm meeting all these women, because I have God had redeemed a lot in women too, in my relationships with women, because I'd been bullied all through middle school and high school, and just had really bad experiences with girls. And
it can be so hard.
Girls are mean. They don't have to be. We're gonna redeem that, but like
yes, but no, was some of my story too.
And it's really tough, and it really, you just kind of believe that you'll never have like good, healthy relationships with the girls. So I get to New York. I'm super passionate about women and female friendships. And I start meeting all these girls, and everyone has a very similar story. Either they were really struggling with female relationships. They also had some like, stuff in their lives and their history, or they were really struggling to find female community. And I think I was like, okay, well, where does this exist? And so some friends and I got together, and I just said to them, I was like, what if we wrote some questions and had this like discussion with women, invited everyone we know, and had kind of a place where you could breed vulnerability and people could connect better. And they were like, okay, sure.
Ooh, like what kind of questions did you start with?
Like, I mean, I think the first event was just about what it's like to be a woman in New York. And it was, started more broad, got a little more personal as the night went on, and people were sharing their, their hearts and their stories. At first it was more general, like here's, what women face in general in New York. And then it got more real, and I think we saw people connect really easily, form friendships. There are girls that went to that first event today that I am still friends with. I was in one of their weddings. Like, it's crazy.
Wow.
And then they all, said to me, they're like, when's the next one? Oh, the next one.
Right.
So about that. So then we just started hosting them, and it grew. And also that first event was like, there was a blizzard. It was SantaCon, which is the worst day of the year.
Gosh.
If you live in New York, you know. And I was like, no one is going to show up to this thing. But like 40, 35, 40 girls came to my little dorm.
To your dorm?
Yeah. My little, we're all like,
girls.
I'm like, sorry guys, we're sitting on the floor. We're eating chicken nuggets.
That's amazing.
And then it just grew from there. And now we have 5 locations across the world. Just started one in Japan. All run by volunteers. Cool. We have a podcast too. We got our nonprofit license in 2020. It's just like crazy town. The way that this has grown, and it's just proof that women have a real hunger to connect and be vulnerable and to have long-standing friendships. And I think it's cities in particular don't foster that very well. There's a lot of people, and you can meet a lot of people, but you don't necessarily go deep or get real. Right. So. Yeah, I don't know. That's how Gather started.
That's
kind of by accident.
That's amazing. And how did y'all, during the pandemic, did you do any like online gatherings?
We went online completely. So, and that was really hard. We got our nonprofit license like the day that COVID started.
No.
And I was kind of like, well.
I feel like everyone has a story of like this crazy thing happened, or this crazy change, or I moved or something, and then the pandemic. Like, why was everyone moving? And
well, everybody thought that, 2020 is just like, we're like, 2020 is the year.
Yeah,
it's 2020. Like new 2020 vision. Nope.
Not right.
Not really.
A little pause. A little pause there.
Record scratch.
Yeah.
So we got our nonprofit license like right as the pandemic started, and I remember being like, why did we do that? Why did we go through this whole thing to form a nonprofit that is built on being together, and nobody can be together?
Yeah.
And I remember just feeling really convicted that people were going to need resources for community more than ever. Like now we're even more isolated. So how do we create that space. So we would host online events all the time. That's when we started the podcast, because it brought women. The podcast is supposed to be a resource too for women to, a lot of the women are more further along in their careers. Gather is for women in their 20s and early 30s, and kind of in that early career where they're just figuring it out and maybe not finding their best friends at their 9 to 5. And, college isn't there. So it's not like you have access to all these people who are in your age group. So that's really what we've kind of narrowed in on, and the vision is for. But that podcast is supposed to be a resource to bring women in to share other stories and to kind of be, encouraging to them. So that started then. We did online events, which was really cool because we had women from all over the world that were coming to these events. Paris and Puerto Rico, and so that was really cool.
Is that part of what kind of led to you spreading to other cities?
So we had already had a couple locations by that point.
Okay.
Women had found out about it in other places, and they were like, we want to start one. We need one here.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, here's all of our content. And we would train these leaders, and they'd host Gather in their, in their cities. And so it had already grown. And then we kind of but what that did too was it really centralized because I was working with girls in these other places, and I knew everyone and kind of had hands in all these places, but the girls came together and we would have weekly calls as a team, and now some of them they travel and see each other, and they're in each other's weddings, and the team itself has become what Gather's mission is for each other, which is really cool. So I don't know, that 2020 was crazy, but it really did, I think, kind of solidify and foster just an even more beautiful community among us. And
that's amazing.
For girls we couldn't reach before. So
wow. Okay, that's incredible. That is so cool. It's so crazy to hear how the pandemic shifted so many business models or dreams or organizations. But a lot of people would say, well, now it's this way. That's even better that we didn't even think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a forced rest and a forced drawing.
Reset.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. And it's crazy that it was 4 years ago.
I literally was thinking about that this morning. I was like, because I graduated in 2020, and it should have been earlier, but I deferred obviously for 12,000 years. But I was like, I graduated a couple years, and I was like, it's been 4 years.
Yeah, you could have gotten another bachelor's degree in that time, or it's it's a.
I could have already been on my way to a PhD, and
I mean, you don't need to. But 4 years feels such a chunk of time.
I know it's a real.
Okay, so you graduated in 2020. And something I didn't know when I first met you, I just assumed that Gather was your full-time job. Mm-hmm. But it's not. You have another career as well. So tell us about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I work in fashion. That's my day job, which is so fun. I love it. My team essentially puts on New York Fashion Week, which is a whole crazy. There's 2 New York Fashion Weeks in the year, one in February and one in September. And it's really fun. It's a lot of live event producing. I work with the brands and the partners that come on to sponsor Fashion Week. I get to work with designers. I get to work with creatives. I like the job because it's just so many different things. Yeah. And I've seen it grow and change and be built. And New York Fashion Week has changed a lot even in the time that I've been there for the past couple of years. So that's my day job. And then on the side of that too, I also am an actress and a writer. And I don't know, there's always 17 things going on.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so with being such a multi-hyphenate, multi-passionate type person, how do you decide what to pursue when, especially coming out of college and then going into kind of your career now? How do you decide what's an idea for later, what's something to jump on now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that there's been different seasons of my life for different things, and we talked about this when I first met you, but I think being a multi-hyphenate is as beautiful as it is, can be kind of sometimes just a source of insecurity, just because I'm jealous of my friends who have this one thing that they know they were born to do, and that's it. And they're, now they're a nurse, and they just, they did it and they did the thing and they committed to it. And I think for me, I've always had all these other, these things that kind of have worked together, but not really been clear of how they fit. And I think that it often, and because I'm a Christian, I know whoever's listening, it can be different for you, but I really feel like God's pointed out what and highlighted kind of what in that season is for me. And with this job in particular, the door was kicked wide open so clearly. I was working at the Department of Justice before, which was total pivot into fashion. But I studied at NYU. I went to NYU and I studied the intersection of justice and human rights and then like film and television. And I was really interested in how narrative and storytelling, love a story, influences social change and policy and people's actual like life and livelihood. Yeah. So I was like, I'll go work in justice first. Did a lot of anti-human trafficking work before that too. And kind of learn that side of things and then go back into entertainment. So there was kind of a clear like, this is kind of where you're going to start and then I'm going to move you into this.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, I think you just have to think about and pray and see what your options are in front of you for what to hold more closely and what to kind of hold more loosely in certain seasons. But I do think, and I told this to you, like, we don't have to figure it out. If you're multi-hyphenate and you have a lot of different things, like, obviously you can't do everything in the world, but if there are like some specific things you know that you have a heart for and passion towards, it's not your job to weave them together. Like if they were genuinely put on your life and placed on your life, they will be woven together and you'll figure out as you go, if you keep holding them faithfully, like how they all work together.
Yes.
I believe. So
no, I think so too. And it's encouraging to see your story of like someone who's a few years ahead, but you're still figuring out how they weave together, but you're seeing it more, you know, and then it'll be so cool to look back in like 10 years and be like, oh, this led to that and these skills and all these things we're building on each other.
I know.
That's so
exciting.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm excited to see. I have no idea.
Oh, I'm so excited to see what your life like holds. You're already so cool. Doing so much. Okay, so you've done a lot of different things in your 20s. You founded an organization. You're still doing acting. You've had 2 really cool jobs, one that you still have. What have been some of the challenges of navigating your 20s? Like, was waiting to come to New York really hard, or has just, what have been some of the challenges?
Well, last night when I was prepping for this, I decided it'd be a good idea at 10 p.m. to get out all of my journals from my 20s.
That's amazing.
I'm a big journaler.
Me too.
And I have like, I'm also like, I went through a phase where I would get them embossed with the date of like when I started.
Oh.
Yeah, and my initials.
What's your journal of choice? Do you change it up or have you been like a...
I do change it up. There's this, I actually don't know how to say it. It's a German brand.
Luke term?
Yes.
Is it that?
Yes.
That's what I use too.
Okay, I'm really particular about like the way a page feels. And anyway, so I love those. Moleskin's fine, but I think these are a little more like heavy duty to me. The page is a little wider. The lines are skinnier. Anyway.
Yes.
Just a
I
little
love
thing.
it.
So I have a bunch of those and I got them all out and I was looking at my 20s and I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, I'm really dramatic. Second of all, like I've been in New York for my entire 20s. Like I moved here right before and I've been here since and I turned 27 next week or in 2 weeks and like crazy.
Yeah.
So I got out all my journals. I was reading through. I've kept such a log of like just all the highs and lows. And I mean, I think there are a couple like things that kind of stood out. One, I think I came into my 20s and came to New York very black and white, like very this is right and this is wrong and this is good and this is bad. But like so much of my 20s has been learning about the gray and just that so much of life exists in that gray and in that tension. And there were so many times in reading through that I was like, this was a really hard season, but it was also incredibly sweet. And like this, I lived for a season in Paris, and while I was doing that, I was going through a really crazy relationship. And my boyfriend was in the army, and so I was writing him letters and like sitting at these Parisian cafes.
That's
it was
so dramatic.
really hard, and I was really homesick. And the cultural barrier in France is really strong. I didn't speak a lick of French. I learned by the end, but like, you know, and so it's like life and life can be bitter and sweet at the same time. Too much of either is going to make you either like too cynical or too, you can't always have sweets. So
true.
I think it's interesting to just see that life so many times exists in both like the joy and the grief. And I wouldn't have been able to hold those two in tension, I think, earlier in my 20s.
Yeah.
I think I saw that a lot. I think I've had a couple pretty significant heartbreaks and just times when I was like, this is crazy. Like I thought this was the way my life would go and it didn't. And just learning that a lot of times, in many cases, like the way to healing is just straight through. You have to go through the wilderness. There's a verse in Isaiah 43 that just says, I make a way in the wilderness and streams in the desert. And, God's way is just right through.
True.
And we often are like, I'm going to go around.
Yeah.
Like,
over.
I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
And that just makes the journey so much longer. When you go straight through, actually faster.
That's true.
We're the ones who make it longer and just decide to be like, I'm going to avoid that feeling.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to this, this vice or whatever. And so I think I learned a lot about just like, all right, head on. We're going to face the pain. We're going to face what we need to face. And we're not going to try to make this a longer journey than it needs to be.
What did that mean? Like, what did you do to face the pain of heartbreak head on?
I think just really like sitting in healing, like really wrestling. And because I think often, especially when you are in a relationship for a long time and then you break up, you have this massive hole. You have a gap, whether you like it or not, and whether that's because there was someone in your life that was very consistent and right next to you and going through things with you, and when they're gone, that's just the truth of the matter. And so we often just go immediately to try to fill that gap, to try to fill it with doing more things, and even with dating again. And we're not, that gap is there for God to close and for us to figure out like how we move forward and what we are supposed to grow from. And we often just try to like fill it with a bunch of stuff because it's easier. So I think it looked like just sitting in that and learning to wrestle and learning to like, not jump to the next thing, to just really sit in that and figure out like where I needed to heal and what I needed to learn from that. Go straight through and like, scary, but often, I didn't want it to be longer than it needed to be.
True.
At this point, I'm like, okay.
Honestly, that's helpful. That's a helpful motivator.
Yeah.
The efficiency. Like, it will be better if I feel these feelings now. That's so funny. And it's so counter cultural or like to our instincts. I remember when I was going through like not a boy heartbreak, but like kind of a job life disappointment heartbreak. Like waking up in the morning and realizing like, wait, I'm allowed to like lay in bed and be sad right now. And it's like, I have never in my life as like a achiever, like creative person, I've never even considered that would be an option for me. But that's been such a journey in my 20s too, of just like feeling the heartbreak, feeling the ouchies, like facing them head on. Yeah.
It's so hard. And so, so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Because we want to do and we want to fix and we want to be, we want to figure things out. But often, like, so much of healing is just sitting and it's just feeling the feelings and it's resting and it's grieving and it's sometimes you just have to grieve.
And process. Yeah.
When you skip that, you'll find it'll come up in some way later.
Yeah.
Always.
It always
doesn't just go away.
Were those seasons too when you felt that grief and joy at the same time? Or did you have those heartbreak seasons more like full grief for a minute? You were talking earlier.
I mean, I think probably a little bit of both. I think they leaned more towards grief, but at the same time, like when I went through probably my most like hard heartbreak, this was another. I decided just on a whim to like put everything in storage and travel for like 6 months.
Whoa.
Just like be a literal nomad, which is so it's not my personality. I don't know. I like to have a space and whatever.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I have to go. And we lived not that far from each other in the city. So I think it was a good, like, I actually need to get out of this section of the city. And geographically, I think New York holds like the different places where I've had different experience. I'll go back and I'm like, oh my gosh. I remember being on this street corner and being, having a breakup conversation, like just crazy.
Yeah.
So I put everything in storage and I moved out of my apartment and I traveled for 6 months. I would, stay on my friends' couches, and then I decided randomly to go to London to see a friend. Found a $20 flight to the south of France.
Oh my gosh.
Did the south of France by myself, which was probably the most like cathartic trip.
Wow.
I was in Chicago, I was in Nashville, I was in Austin. I just like decided to move around, and I think travel personally like kicks up a lot of dust in my life and like lets me kind of it's easier to process because you're kind of like, I have to deal with these things. And I was alone for most of the time. I loved to travel alone.
I
was alone for most of that. And so it was a beautiful season. I was like, this is stunning. I'm in these stunning places. I'm learning all these things. But it was at the same time I was crying every day.
So
were
you working remote?
At least if you're going to cry, you might as well cry on the south of France,
True.
on the French Riviera.
Right. So dramatic in the best way.
That should be like the title of it.
Honestly. Was that after college when you were already working remote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was
That
after
makes
college.
sense. That was
I was working remote.
yeah.
I did take some time off. I had like vacation stuff that I never used. So
that's awesome.
I wasn't working for when I was abroad, but
okay.
the other places, yeah.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Highly recommend.
Yeah.
Highly recommend solo travel if you can. But after 6 months of being a nomad and sleeping on couches, I was like, okay, I'm ready to set down roots again and have my own space. But it was such a good, like, I don't think I'd ever have the chance to do that again.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm glad I did it when I did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Okay, what have you learned about our generation or our sort of age group of young 20-something, early 30s women, like through founding an organization where you're leading people, creating community, creating conversation and leadership content? Like, what have you learned about yourself or our age group?
Our age group?
Yeah.
I think, yes, because I'm the expert on our age.
Right. I mean, sort of.
I mean, I think something I realized and that I see a lot in our events is people really crave like deep, authentic connection. I think that in this day and age when we can, access anything at any time, I think we're starting to see it swing into like people being really hungry and craving what they were designed to have, which is deep, authentic relationship with one another. So that's why, I mean, our events in New York like sell out in literally an hour. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And elsewhere too. I think it's a need everywhere. But so that I think too, loneliness is really pervasive kind of off the back of that it's easy to feel like you're not doing enough. It's easy to feel like no one really knows you, especially in a city, especially here. You're like, okay, I know people, but am I really, really known?
Yeah.
I do think that takes time. I felt that way when I first moved here and I was like, I have to go home. No one knows me.
Right.
But I'm glad I stuck it out because it takes time.
It does.
And then 3, I think another thing is we want, because of the instant gratification, just generation that we have, we often want instant success. We want to figure it all out right now. We want to be famous right away.
Yeah.
We want to jump the cliff without really like ever learning how to climb it. And I think that the generations before us, and I think that generally the way that life works and should work for it to be successful is like you have to learn to climb. You have to like build a staircase. Don't just like jump the cliff, because if you fall off the cliff, you're in a lot more trouble than if you like stumble down a few stairs. And so like taking time to grow and become more of a person to carry the weight of the calling that you have received is huge, because we often just want to like get there without really knowing how we got there and not having like a strong foundation under us. And I do think that will, I think we're gonna, I don't know, I hope not, but I don't want to see people fall because of that. And I think that there's a reason that like we are supposed to grow to carry the things that we're called to, because we're God doesn't just like drop something on your head without you being able to hold it up. He wants to train you to grow and be able to carry that. And so growing capacity before you can carry these things is so important. So I've seen that a lot in our generation.
It's so true, because I feel like we've been subconsciously given all these messages from such a young age of like, well, you can open your own business and buy your own house and do all these things at 21, 22, because that's what we've seen these influencers maybe that we grew up watching on YouTube, or even just feeling like, I don't know if you felt this at all, but feeling like you're behind in certain things.
All the time.
And like I'm 24 and like feeling like, oh my gosh, well, I remember even in high school seeing, you're in musical theater as well, seeing they started casting high schoolers as high schoolers on Broadway and being like, oh no, like I'm going to go to college and I'm ruining everything. And it's just not true. But we see those stories. We see so much less of the stories of people who did something else first, or climbed like a normal human.
Yeah, I know. The other day I looked up like people who started late, and like not that I'm late. It's just it's so easy to feel like that, especially in New York. I think the city really makes that more of a thought because everyone here is doing a million things and everyone here is so driven. You don't come here to like retire. So
No.
everyone's here with like a dream and a purpose.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, what gives you groundedness or hope in a season in a city where so many things are happening? You're doing so many amazing things.
Yeah.
What kind of keeps you just in check with who you are, what matters?
My people, for sure. I think that I've gone from, and I will say, I think this is something I'm reflecting on for this year of my life. It's just I was debating if I was going to move apartments, and one of my friends who's just like super prophetic and lovely, and she's looked at me, she's like, well, what do you want this year? What do you feel like this year is for? And she's like, because I think that'll dictate the decision you make. And I'm like, oh, that's a good question. I never thought about that in terms of picking an apartment, but it's true. And I really do think it's to go deeper with the things that I have in my hand and the people that are in my life. And I think John Tyson, who's the pastor at Church of the City, who's amazing, he said this thing that has stuck with me. I don't even know when he said it. It's been months, but it said, he said, you don't need to do more. You need to do what you already do with more intensity and more intentionality.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll let that one sit.
Wait, that's really good.
So I think going deeper, just getting more grounded with the people that I already have in my life. I love having new friends. I will always have new friends, but I think I don't feel this like need to have this crazy large, group of people in my life. I just want to go deeper with the ones I have. So that keeps me grounded. Obviously faith, which I've talked about. Yeah. I think having mentors who have done it before me and go ahead of me. Ali Sigmeyer is one of them, and just people that I really admire and look up to, but also who are like running with me. I don't know. It's like such a cool. I feel really blessed that I have people in my life like that, even in California, that I still talk to and chat with, and who I look up to in that way. So.
And you've helped so many people find their people.
Yeah, I hope so.
Things that you do.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Which is amazing. Okay, last question, Lauren. What are you looking forward to right now?
That's a good question. I think a little bit of what I already said, just going deeper with the people in my life. I'm looking forward to, I really feel like it's the season's turning for me right now. Like I think that, I'm turning 27 soon. And I love birthdays. I think it's a great chance to reflect, and this kind of like decision to have a new start and a fresh page. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for I'm actually running the New York Marathon.
Oh my gosh.
I got chosen in the lottery, which is a joke.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't think that was gonna happen.
Congratulations.
Well, it doesn't happen. It's like 2%.
No, that's insane.
And then all of a sudden I get an email.
You literally won the lottery.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, wait, that's so exciting.
I just ran my first half marathon a couple weeks ago on a sprained ankle, which was crazy. So I think there's something I'm learning about endurance and pain and discomfort.
Run the race.
Keep running the race. So I'm excited for that. I don't know. I'm excited for just all the ways that Gather's growing, and all the people I get to meet along the way, and for Fashion Week.
For Fashion Week, yes. When's the next one?
September.
Okay. It'll be here before you know it.
Oh, I know.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're like, I know. I'm working
I'm
on
aware.
it right now. Oh, Lauren, this was such a joy.
No, this was so fun.
So fun. You're amazing. Just so inspiring and encouraging. And
thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, y'all. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at Tears and Joy Podcast, and the links will be in the show notes. And send this to a friend who you know will love this episode. We'll see you next Thursday.